Okay, so welcome back to our lecture series called Daily News and Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover that day's newspaper, important items in that day's newspaper within a short span of time, and that is 20 minutes. So within 20 minutes, we will cover the important news items from today's newspaper. Now, today is July the 2nd, 2024. It's Tuesday today, and whatever important was covered in today's newspaper, we shall cover that in a very short span of time. Follow this lecture series regularly because if you have read today's newspaper, you'll be able to revise important news items. Okay? And if you have not read today's newspaper, then you'll be able to cover important news items. And needless to say, current affairs are very important for your UPSC preparation, so you shouldn't ignore current affairs. Okay? All right. So let's straight away jump to today's topics. What were the important topics that were covered in today's newspaper? All right. So today's topics are number one, world's first brain implant. Now in UK, a teenager was given this brain implant. A chip was inserted into his brain which stopped his seizures. He was suffering from epileptic seizures, and this brain implant actually reduced his epileptic seizures by 80%. So what is this brain implant device? What is epilepsy? We'll talk about that. Now, next news item would be RBI has joined Project Nexus along with other countries from ASEAN. So, what is this Project Nexus and how would RBI and India stand to benefit from this project or RBI's joining of this project? We'll talk about this. Then recently, RBI released its financial stability report, and in that report, RBI has said that India's banking sector has become quite healthy now. And sky is the limit from now onwards because a healthy banking sector is the most important factor for a healthy economy. So it is good news as per RBI's financial stability report. So what is financial stability report? We'll talk about that. And what were the key findings in this financial stability report? We'll also discuss that. Then last but not the least, Chital, also known as spotted deer. Well, the numbers or the population of spotted deer in Kuno National Park, Madhya Pradesh, has started to dwindle. Within the last 1 year, the population of Chital actually declined by 25%. Now, people say that that's because of importing of cheetahs from Africa, and cheetahs actually are predators for this spotted deer, right? So it is because of hunting by these cheetahs, leopards, and tigers that Chital numbers are dwindling. So, what is Chital? What is its IUCN status? What is Kuno National Park or where is Kuno National Park? We'll talk about all these issues. This is something related to the environment. Okay, so these are the 4 topics that we are going to discuss today. So without further ado, let's start with topic number 1, which is world's first brain implant. Now look, what was in the news? UK-based teenager Oran Nolson has become the first person in the world to be fitted with a brain implant to help bring his epileptic seizures under control. Now, this device that was inserted in Oran Nolson's brain is known as Deep Brain Stimulation Device, DBS. So, Deep Brain Stimulation Device, and it actually helps your brain to cope up with epilepsy. Now, what is epilepsy basically? Look, epilepsy is a neurological condition in which there is excess electrical activity in your brain. So electrical signals actually become abnormally high. And because of that, your body actually faces or your body actually feels seizure-like situation. Okay. So seizures, as you guys understand, I need not explain what seizures are, but your body starts to vibrate a lot. Okay, so this happens during epilepsy. So epilepsy is a condition when your body feels or faces these recurring seizures, and this is due to abnormally high electrical activity in the brain. Now, what are the causes of epilepsy? Generally, 50% of epilepsy cases. Generally, in 50% of epilepsy cases, well, doctors are unable to find what is the root cause behind this. In 50% of the cases. For the rest 50%, the causes can be head traumas or head injury, brain tumors, meningitis. That is basically an infection in the protective covering of your brain. Your brain is actually covered by meninges. So an infection over there causes meningitis, and there can be genetic reasons as well. So these are the major causes of epilepsy. In India, between 3 to 11.9 per 1,000 people suffer from epilepsy, according to a study conducted by Lancet Journal. Okay. Now, basically, what this deep brain stimulation device does is, well, epilepsy happens or epileptic seizures happen because of unusually high electrical activity in your brain. Well, this device actually stops that unusually high epileptic activity. And because of that, your body does not feel any seizures. When this DBS device was inserted in Oran Nolson, well, he saw or he felt that his epileptic seizures reduced by 80%. So this is basically a success story. Now let's talk a bit more about this device, DBS device, deep brain stimulation device. So it is basically 3.5 centimeter square and 0.6 centimeter in thickness. This device actually delivers constant electrical impulses to the brain to disrupt or block abnormal seizure causing signals, seizure causing electrical signals. Well, this device, as you can see in this image, this device is basically inserted deep into the brain. Okay, in which area of the brain? Well, it is inserted into thalamus. Thalamus in your brain is the relay center for motor and sensory nerves. Sensory nerves are which bring in the sensory inputs like touch, smell, taste, right? So these nerves actually bring sensory inputs, and motor nerves are those nerves which induce physical activity. So if you want to move your hand, well, your brain sends a signal to your hand through motor nerves. Now these motor and sensory impulses actually join or come to thalamus. Okay, so it is basically a relay center. Now this DBES device is actually placed in thalamus, then a few electrodes are attached to it, and then electrical signals are given. All right. Now, this device can be recharged by a wireless headphone. So, you just have to place a headphone on your head and this device would get recharged. But mind you, this device is very expensive. Basically, these neurostimulators, as they are called, this DBS device costs around 12 lakh rupees. Plus, additional surgery costs are also being incurred by the patient. Okay. So, if you have to get this surgery done in a private hospital, well, 5 lakh for the surgery, 12 lakh for the device. So, around 17 lakh you have to pay to get treated. Now, this is very expensive from Indian standards. That is why doctors have said that if other treatments for epileptic seizures do not work, then only you should go for this device. Okay? Now, what are those other treatments for epileptic seizures? Well, DBS is suggested only when drugs and diet have failed to control seizures. Now, whenever someone is facing epileptic seizures, well, he or she is given anti-seizure medicines or he is put on ketogenic diet. Now, what is ketogenic diet? This is a diet which is high in fats and low in carbohydrates. Now, no one knows the reason why, but ketogenic diet seems to work very well for epileptic seizures. If people people suffering from this disease are put on a ketogenic diet, which is very high in fats but very low in carbohydrates, well, their epileptic seizures actually reduce by a significant percentage points, even in children. Now, plus, if epileptic seizures are not reducing or they are not being reduced by this ketogenic diet, well, then you are put on anti-seizure medicines. And if both these treatments do not work, then doctors recommend a brain surgery. Now, brain surgery generally costs around 20 to 30,000. What doctors do basically in this brain surgery is the areas which are causing this unusually high electrical activity in your brain, those areas are removed artificially from your brain through a surgery. Okay. Now, doctors are saying that brain surgery costs around 20 to 30,000. Anti-seizure medicines are even cheaper. Ketogenic diet is basically no cost at all. It doesn't cost you at all. So, if these three treatments are not working, then only you should go for a DBS device. All right. So, yeah, that's about it. Now, let's move on to next news item, which is Project Nexus. Now, look, RBI has joined Project Nexus, and Project Nexus is basically launched by BIS. BIS is Bank for International Settlements. It is headquartered in London. Okay. And what is this BIS Project Nexus? Well, Project Nexus is a network. It is basically a platform through which fast payment systems of different countries are connected. So India's fast payment system is called UPI, right? Google Pay, Paytm and all that. India's fast payment system is UPI. Singapore's fast payment system is PayNow, right? So different countries have their own fast payment systems. Now, if these countries join BIS's Project Nexus, well, then people would be able to quickly pay from one country to another country. So basically what will happen is that an Indian would use UPI to transfer money to someone sitting in Singapore. That person in Singapore would be using Singapore's PayNow. But because PayNow and UPI are connected, so through UPI you can transfer payment from one country to another. This would basically facilitate cross-border transactions, cross-border retail payments. So if you're ordering something from Singapore or Malaysia for that matter, well, their fast payment system and India's UPI are now linked, and you can use UPI to transfer payments across the border. All right. So this would actually facilitate cross-border transactions, because generally cross-border transactions take a lot of time to clear. But through this, these cross-border transactions would not take more than 60 seconds. Okay, so India's UPI and FPSs of Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand will be interlinked through this nexus. So India and these four ASEAN countries, so Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand are basically ASEAN countries. So as of now, only India and these four ASEAN countries have joined Project Nexus. So that is why these five countries are called founding members or first mover countries on this platform. All right. Now, who developed Project Nexus? Well, it was developed by BIS and BIS's internal department called Innovation Hub. So BIS has an internal department called Innovation Hub. They develop Project Nexus, and through Project Nexus, well, cross-border transactions are going to be facilitated, but only for those countries who join this Project Nexus. All right. So what are the benefits of this Nexus project? So it will enable cross-border payments from sender to recipient within 60 seconds. So faster cross-border payments would get facilitated. This would actually significantly increase the amount of cross-border transactions. Okay, so these are the two benefits. Plus, BIS actually is standardizing the way these payment systems, fast payment systems, connect with each other. Now, to connect India's UPI with some other countries' FPS, well, there is a lot of back-end infrastructure work that has to be done. But not anymore, because that back-end infrastructure work has been done by BIS through Project Nexus. That particular country only has to join this platform and everything is sorted for them. So it will standardize the way fast payment systems of different countries connect with each other. All right. So this is Project Nexus. Just remember a few facts for your prelims examination. Projects, for example, who created Project Nexus? Which are the founding member countries of Project Nexus? Okay, which are the first mover countries for Project Nexus? Okay, 4 ASEAN countries and India. All right. Now let's move on to our third news item, which is Financial Stability Report by RBI. Now look, Financial Stability Report is a biannual report released by RBI. Biannual. Okay, so this biannual report is released by RBI, and this actually studies and reports the financial health of the country, the financial situation of the country. Now, the bedrock of our financial system are banks, both public sector banks, private sector banks, and foreign banks as well. So our financial sector is dependent on banks, and that is why Financial Stability Report basically reports financial health of banks. Okay, just remember that this is a biannual report. It reveals facts regarding financial health of India, which is indirectly talking about financial health of banking sector. Okay, now this latest edition of Financial Stability Report was the 29th edition. All right, and in this report, a lot of facts have been shared which actually say that India is going through a very good phase right now as far as India's banking sector is concerned. As per RBI's latest financial stability report, not only have banks seen an sustained improvement in their asset quality. Asset quality means that their NPAs have declined, non-performing assets, but their profitability has remained high, plus their capital position, which is measured by capital adequacy ratio, is also healthy. Now, this improvement is being observed across both public and private sector banks. So both public sector banks, government banks, and private banks, they both are doing very well. All right. Now, this was 29th issue. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the key findings of this report. Well, FSR, Financial Stability Report, says that India's gross NPA ratio has declined to a 12-year low. That means that in the last 12 years, the current current gross NPA ratio is at its lowest. It's around 2.8%, which is very comfortable for banks. Very comfortable for banks. And this decline in gross NPA ratio is for public sector banks. It's true for public sector banks. It's true for private banks. It's also for foreign banks. So all banks are having a good time right now as far as NPA is concerned. Now, what are the reasons behind this decline in NPA ratio? First of all, many banks actually wrote off various bad loans. So loan write-offs, plus banks were careful this time before giving someone a new loan. Okay, because banks need to actually, before giving a loan, banks actually go for getting financial information on the borrower. Okay, financial information borrower like KYC guidelines, know your customer guidelines, or know your customer norms, or any other financial information, just to gauge the fact that whether that person would be able to pay back the loan or not. And because banks have been careful, they were able to not generate any fresh bad loans. And because of that, their gross NPA ratio has declined. Plus, banks have improved their provision coverage ratio. Okay, their net interest income from loans has increased. Their capital position has become great. Okay, so banks are well capitalized. Their incomes have increased. Their profitability has increased. Plus, their provision coverage ratio. Though we'll cover that in a separate lecture, what provision coverage ratio is, but it's basically a buffer to take care of NPAs. Okay, that has increased. All right. Now let's move on to our last news item, which is dwindling Chital numbers. Now, as you guys all know, that there is this project Cheetah going on in our country. Project Cheetah is basically Cheetah relocation project. So what is Project Cheetah? Basically, there are two types of cheetahs. Okay, African cheetahs, which are a bit larger, and Asiatic cheetahs. Now, African cheetahs are mostly found in South Africa and Namibia and other countries of Africa. Well, Asiatic cheetahs were found in Indian subcontinent, but they became extinct. They became extinct in 1950s itself. So Asiatic cheetahs became extinct from India in 1950s. So India does not have any cheetahs. Now, India decided to import African cheetahs into India so as to repopulate India's landscape with cheetahs. And that is why Project Cheetah was launched. Under Project Cheetah, many cheetahs would be brought in from South Africa and Namibia and placed in Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh and Gandhi Sagar National Park, again in Madhya Pradesh. Okay, now most of the cheetahs that have been imported from South Africa and Namibia are placed in Kuno National Park, but some of these cheetahs would now be transported to Gandhi Sagar National Park. All right, now why are we doing that? Because Project Cheetah authorities have found out that the numbers of cheetahs in Kuno National Park has crossed a certain threshold. They have increased beyond a certain limit, and because of that, the deer population in that area is declining. Now, Kuno National Park and Gandhi Sagar National Park have a particular type of deer called spotted deer. It has a lot of white spots on it. And this particular type of deer is called Chital. Now, Chital is generally hunted by these big cats, tigers, leopards, cheetahs. And because too many cheetahs were imported into Kuno National Park, the Chital numbers have declined. Okay? Because these cheetahs have hunted these Chital, spotted deers, a lot. And because of that, their population has dwindled by 25% in the past 1 year. By 25% since 2022. Okay? So that is why many people are who are involved in Project Cheetah are transporting some cheetahs from Kuno National Park to Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary or Gandhi Sagar National Park. All right? So that is the news. Now, what is important for us is what is this Chital, spotted deer? Okay? So let's talk a bit about Chital. Now, it is known as spotted deer, Chital deer, axis deer. So you need to remember these alternate names for this particular species. It is a deer species that is indigenous to the Indian subcontinent. That means it is only found in Indian subcontinent. Okay, this species is sexually dimorphic. That means males and females are generally different. Males are generally larger than females, and these antlers are only found on males. Only males have these antlers. Females do not have these antlers. Okay. As far as their population is concerned, their level of threat is concerned, well, IUCN Red List actually maintains a list of species and different threat levels that they are facing. Now, as per IUCN Red List, Chital does not face any threat of extinction. It is not critically endangered. It is not vulnerable. It is of least concern. That means there are a lot of chitals roaming around in India. Their population is not at all vulnerable. Okay. Now, as I've mentioned before, they are indigenous to Indian subcontinent, so their habitat is generally deep forests in India, forest valleys, grasslands. Now, their population is mostly distributed in India and Sri Lanka. But some of these chitals were imported to Australia and USA. So now we can find chitals in Australia and USA as well, but their natural habitat was Sri Lanka and India. And that's about it. That's all from today's newspaper. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it is adding value to your preparation, though it would add more value if you make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. It should be your daily habit because current affairs are very important. And spending 20 minutes daily on current affairs is the least you can do for your UPSC preparation. All right. I'll see you next time with the newspaper of 3rd July 2024. Thank you, everyone.